exactly one here. Tick tock, tick tock. Okay, we'll begin the Plan Committee meeting of Akron City Council. It's 1 o'clock. I'd like to remind the committee and council members and all present that we do have a presentation at 1:45 today. But we do have 4 items that are up for a public hearing. First of all, I'd like to entertain a motion. We accept the minutes of previously held meeting. Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. The nays? No nays? Okay, very good. We have 4 items that are up for a public hearing. For those of you that are here visiting today, I would ask that you be sworn in. The process is that you're sworn in this afternoon and this evening if you would like to testify before the committee. Okay, we'll have a public hearing right now, and we'll have one at 7 o'clock. The committee and council members will have an opportunity to ask questions this afternoon. And this evening, the only real difference is that the committee will make a recommendation in terms of approval, disapproval, or just a table, take time on the measure, on the conditional use request. So with that, if you wish to testify before the committee today, I ask you to please stand and be sworn in by a representative of our law department.
Okay, if you would, please raise your right hands. Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say I do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The first item that we have up for a public hearing this afternoon is authorizing conditional use to expand Green Lawn Memorial Park Cemetery at 2696 Romick. Mr. Antonucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Green Lawn Cemetery Association is seeking approval to incorporate an additional acre of land at the southeast corner of their memorial park. Green Lawn Memorial Park would transform the additional land into a park-like setting for inurnment and cremation garden. A gazebo for funeral services would be constructed on the western portion of the site, while a columbarium with niches for urns would be located on the eastern portion of the land. A drive at the south end of the site would provide access from Roman Road to a parking area for 16 vehicles at the southwest corner of the property. Fencing would be provided along the south and west sides of the lot, and flowers and shrub beds would be included. The occasional ceremonies and visitations are solemn by nature, and the proposed memorial garden should have little impact on surrounding properties. Both Planning Commission and Planning staff recommend approval, subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. At this point, we'll open up the public hearing and ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use to expand Green Lawn Memorial Park Cemetery. If you'd like to speak in favor, you're more than welcome to please step forward and provide for the committee why you favor this proposal for Green Lawn. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor?
My name is Don Paul. I'm the superintendent of Green Lawn Cemetery. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have on this. One thing that I would like to say, though, is the plans that we submitted, the drawings, are not finalized. These are just something that we had made up to give you an idea of what a cremation garden is. Okay. We have not hired an architect. That they strictly design these sorts of things, so when we would have those done, we would submit those plans to the committee then.
Yes.
So,
thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the proposal on Green Lawn Cemetery, 2696 Memorial Cemetery? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone? Anyone wishing to speak against the proposal for expansion of the Green Lawn Memorial Park Cemetery, 2696? Anyone against? Anyone wishing to speak against? Very good. We'll close the public hearing and then now open it up to any committee members who may have questions or comments. I have one quick one for Mr. Antonucci. Given the fact that this is just a conditional use for the actual use of the land area. However, though, in terms of the plans, that would need to be approved by pretty much every department in the city as is, right?
That's correct. We
Okay.
also have the condition that we look and review a landscape plan, and there will be a bond posted, so we'll have time to review those plans.
Very good. Okay, so it should not impact the conditional use request. Very good. Any questions or comments from any members? The Committee of Council? Very good. Hearing none, we'll welcome you back this evening at 7 o'clock, in which we'll have another public hearing, and we'll make a recommendation to all of council. The second item that's up for public hearing is a conditional use to place an additional monument sign at 985 Gorge Boulevard. Mr. Antonucci.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Akron Public Schools is requesting permission to place a new monument sign along the west side of Gorge Boulevard. Conditional use is necessary for the second monument sign. New sign will be set along Gorge Boulevard in a grassy area between the corner of Talmadge Avenue and Gorge Boulevard and the parking lot entrance. The sign would measure approximately 4 feet by 7 feet for an overall area of 28 square feet, and would read College and Career Academies, Akron Public Schools North, in black letters on a white background, along with the logos of the program partner agencies. This is to be a double-sided, non-illuminated, freestanding monument sign painted white with vinyl graphics. North High School is one of 8 sites in the city that hosts the College and Career Academies. The purpose of the sign is to identify their location and assist with wayfinding. The traffic engineer has determined the sign will not be a site obstruction for pedestrians or vehicles. The design was reviewed and approved by Urban Design and Historic Preservation Commission at their meeting this past July 2nd. Both Planning Commission and Planning staff recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request on Gorge Boulevard? Can you please provide for us your name and address?
Good afternoon. I'm Deborah Folk, and I'm the Executive Director of Business Affairs for Akron Public Schools. And as Mr. Antonucci detailed in his explanation, this is a sign that would allow our public to know our vast amount of partners that are supporting our new College and Career Academy model. This is the first of probably another set of 7 requests so that we can honor those wonderful vendors that have been encouraging to this new obligation and transformation of our high school educational process. And I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request at 985 Gorge Boulevard? Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor? Anyone? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone against this proposal? Okay, very good. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and open up to any committee members who may have questions or comments. Ms. Mobian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mrs. Folk, I know there's a sign at the corner of Talmadge and Gorge.
That is correct.
Are you going to have anything on there related to the academies at all?
No, this is a separate sign because the one at the point of Gorge and Talmadge is the actual school sign that announces the events. So therefore, this additional sign honors those premier support colleagues for our particular venues. They could be changed if necessary because there's a way to change the support venue when necessary. Okay. And the one at Gorge and Talmadge will remain the same.
Okay. And the new one will just be permanently listing the academy? That
is correct. It currently will list Akron Children's Hospital as our first supporting colleague to this particular set at North.
No, I'm very supportive. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Mr. Swirsky?
Yeah, I just want to point out that the design was reviewed by the Urban Design and Historic Planning Committee.
Yes, it was, and they made a suggestion to the alteration of the sign that modified the middle sentence, which said in partnership with, which spanned the entire part of the sign. They felt it was not easily read, so we repositioned that sentence to the left of the sign to align it with the APS logo and the logo of the first partner, which happens to be Akron Children's Hospital. We felt it was much easier to read, and that was what was approved at the first meeting of the commission.
So I'm glad that you welcomed their input and reacted to it in a positive way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Further questions or comments from anyone? Very good. Hearing none, we'll invite you back this evening if you would like. And Ms. Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so is it the intent to have all of the signs look alike?
The top of the signs probably will be very similar with the APS logo associated with each school. College and Career Academy is an appropriate name, and then the individual high school. It will be the partners that would be different at the location under the word partnership.
So just for point of clarity, are you saying that the partnership portion of the sign are interchangeable?
They are. So the agreements run for, at this point, for 5 years. And I don't foresee that, say, as an example, Akron Children's Hospital wouldn't want to continue as a partner at North, but say that a second partner or a third partner is added and they, go on to something else in the future and we get a new partner, they are interchangeable at the bottom. That is correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions or comments? Very good. Hearing none.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item number 3, authorizing conditional use to vary the required side yard area to construct a detached garage at 832 Chester.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Scott Canis intends to replace the current one-car garage with a new two-car garage to be located on a wide side yard. The new two-car garage would measure 19 feet in width by 24 feet in length, and the structure would be situated 5 feet from the west property line. It would be aligned with the neighboring garage to the west, approximately 32 feet from Chester Avenue. The exterior would be vinyl sided, and the reverse gable roof would match the style of the dwelling. A covered patio would be attached to the rear of the garage. Petitioner desires to increase the usability and attractiveness of the rear yard area. Relocating the garage to the side yard will increase the amount of usable open space on the property. The new garage would provide storage for the family's vehicles and lawn equipment. It would only be used for residential purposes. The proposed improvements represent a significant investment in this property and should have a positive impact on the neighborhood. Both Planning Commission and Planning staff recommend approval, subject to conditions.
Thanks, Mr. Antonucci. We'll now open up the public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request at 832 Chester Avenue to construct a detached garage? Anyone here wishing to speak in favor? Anyone in favor? Okay. Anyone in favor? Okay. Is there anyone here wishing to speak against the proposed detached garage at 832 Chester Avenue? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone? Okay, very good. Hearing none, we'll now close the public hearing and ask the committee if there's any questions or comments. I do know that I can say that the petitioners are here and present, so just for the record. Okay, very good. Hearing no questions or comments from anyone, we'll now move on to item number 4, which is next. Conditional. I will also invite you back this evening at 7 o'clock as well. Item number 4 is a conditional use to construct a storage building at 560 Talmadge Avenue. Mr. Antonucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. DeVitas and Sons proposes to construct a storage building on this property. The building would be built over an undeveloped grassed area at the southeast portion of the property. The painted masonry single-story building with gabled shingled roof would measure 90 feet by 40 feet. It would be set back 60 feet from Damon Street. A drive with newly aligned curb cut would be built in order to access the storage building from Damon Street. A solid fence is currently in place between the store property and the residence, which is owned by the petitioner at 936 Damon Street. Both the fence and a landscape buffer along Damon Street will remain. DeVitas Italian Market has been a staple on North Hill for 67 years. They've grown over the years and now employ almost 50 people. Storage space is needed for future growth, as well as retention of current parking for employees and customers. The storage building and Damon Street access will assist DeVitas Italian Market in continuing to do business in Akron and serving this neighborhood. Both Planning Commission and Planning staff recommend approval, subject to conditions.
Thanks, Mr. Antonucci. We'll now open up the public hearing and ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use at 560 East Talmadge Avenue. If you could please provide for us your name and address.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert DeVitas. I'm just here to answer any questions and just to reiterate the fact that we need more storage and we don't want to lose parking spaces to do that, as Mr. Antonucci suggested. We did submit a preliminary plan. We're working with an architect and construction company to get final plans, and we'll submit them to the building department as they become available.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request at 560 East Talmadge Avenue? Anyone in favor? Anyone else? Okay, anyone against this conditional use request at 560 East Talmadge Avenue? Anyone wishing to speak against? Okay, we'll close the public hearing, invite you back this evening, and ask the committee if there's any questions or comments from any committee members at this time. Questions? Ms. Mobian.
I'm looking at the diagram. It's just that little small corner that they're adding to it. Is that what it is?
Well, the existing building is small. This other one is like 30 by 50. I forgot exactly the rough dimensions we gave them, but it'd be attached to that existing building.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't appear to be obstructing anything.
No.
Okay. Thank you very much
Yeah, thank you.
for your service.
Mr. Swirsky.
In this report from the Planning Department, there's a sentence near the end that I want to congratulate you on. It says, the storage building and Damon Street access will assist DeVites. Right before it, DeVites has shown compatibility with surrounding residents over the years. Appreciate that and hope it continues.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Very good. Hearing none. Okay, we'll move on and invite you back this evening at 7 o'clock, in which the committee will make a recommendation. Thank you. I'm going to recommend time on the balance of the agenda of the regular legislation. Now we'll move into the new list of legislation. Three. And this is authorizing the mayor or his designee to apply for and, if awarded, accept and expend grant funds associated with the lead hazard reduction grant program from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, authorizing expenditure of necessary local matching funds. Mr. Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Fusco. This is a $4.6 million four-year lead hazard reduction grant, which includes a Healthy Homes component with supplemental funds with the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Office of Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Homes. So this would authorize the mayor or his designee to apply for the grant.
Very good. And this is like a continuation of a program that we've had in the past, correct?
That is correct.
Very good. Okay. When is this due, this application?
August 8th.
August 8th. Therefore, time is of the essence. Very good. Questions or comments from committee? Ms. Mobian?
Again, this is a program we've had for a number of years, but hasn't it been $3 million as opposed to this much? Or this is the same?
Yes. The previous grant was 3.7. This year, the Department of Healthy Homes found that they were given more money. There's been a number of different graduating grants down from $9 million down to $3 million. We felt our best offer was the $4 million grant with the 600,000 Healthy Homes. They also extended this from 3 years to 42 months.
So this amount of money, you would get so much every year?
Well, we would break it down per year, but it's pretty much broken down per unit. Our expectation is to do approximately 250 units. During that time, we expect to help over 300 children prevent lead poisoning.
And these are homes that we're removing lead, where children that are young are there with their grandparents or anybody for a certain amount of time?
Correct. The grandparents are eligible also. It's considered acceptable home would be, qualifying home would have a child under the age of 6 either residing in the home or spending a significant amount of time in the home, which would allow grandparents also to apply for the grant.
And significant means?
It's 3 incidents of 2 hours each per week. Up to no less than 60 hours per year.
Okay. And we've been able to address 250 homes a year approximately?
No, that'd be 250 over the length of the grant. We're expending about $17,000 per home was what our current grant came at. So with the combination of some CDBG funds and the lead funds, we'll be able to do approximately 250 homes.
So approximately 60 some homes a year or something?
Around there, yes.
And do we target areas or first come, first serve? How do we identify?
This is citywide on an as-needed basis, first come, first serve. We currently have approximately 100 homes that are waiting from the last grant. That we came on strong at the last grant, and we had a lot of homeowners apply we weren't able to serve. So we have approximately 100 homes currently waiting. If once we're funded, we can get on those homes right away.
Yeah. If you don't mind, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
We have so many programs similar to this, and I know that there was, at one point, we were utilizing this in addition to something else if we find other things that other grants would qualify for, like roofing, front doors, steps, and those kinds of things. We're still trying to do those in combination as much as we can.
Correct. With the Healthy Homes add-on, there's 29 Healthy Homes designated items that can be addressed with Healthy Homes funds. So we will assess each home of those 29 risks, decide which ones are the most hazardous, which ones need to be addressed first, and we'll take care of those. Those any range anywhere from mold to radon gas, on into just structural collapse, those type of things.
Could we have those?
The 29 items?
Yes.
Sure, not a
Thank
problem.
you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You may have answered my question. I know in past history, one year we were challenged in utilizing all of our funds, and I think we had to return some of them. Based on your answer to Councilwoman Mobley, and that wasn't the issue, I take it last year.
We've never returned funds in the 3 previous grants to this, plus Healthy Homes grant, which will make 4. We've never returned any funds. We've expended all the funds.
Well,
We scrambled at the end of this last grant that we had, but we did come on. We actually did 40 more units than HUD required us for the previous grant, which put us in good standing with HUD.
Okay. And since we're getting more lead money for this program, how much, you mentioned community block grant dollars. What's the percentage of community block grant dollars we use to support the program?
Well, the minimum requirement is 15%. We usually put in a little bit better than that. The last grant, we expended about approximately 46% matching funds of CDBG funds. Actually, 46% was the total match. I'm sorry, we had in-kind match and also landlord investments, which was private funds. So between the two we had 46% in the last grant. I would estimate we were probably closer to the 30%, which I think we obligated for in the grant initially.
Okay. In your answer to Mr. Mobley, what I'd like to know is if, with the increased funding and what we put in last year, if we wouldn't have to put in any more, because I'm assuming we have greater flexibility with the community block grant dollars to address like roofing programs and things like that. Just if I could put in a plug, that's what I'm hearing from out in the community, a high need for assistance with roofs.
Well, with the Healthy Homes initiative that comes on top of this, this will alleviate some of the additional CDBG funds that we found we had to expend with some of the previous grants. So that's a nice thing, having the extra. They've increased that from $300,000 to $600,000 this grant cycle. So we will have a little bit more. We're going to help approximately 115 homes with the Healthy Homes funding. We currently still are running the roofing program. Those are CDBG funds, and we're receiving applications every day for that. So one program's not going to stop because this program continues. And sometimes we do use the roofing program in conjunction with the lead funds, strictly because they may not qualify for the Healthy Homes funds.
Further questions, comments? Ms. Amovian.
Just 2 questions, just to follow up. You said something about landlord. Now, I'm assuming that some of these homes are not necessarily owned by the people that are living there. So they are renting? Mm-hmm. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, a landlord could qualify for the property under a couple different circumstances. But with our grant, we are requiring the landlord to provide 25% match out of pocket. So if they, if they wish to get the grant, simple math would be a $10,000 job. They'd provide $2,500. We'd provide $7,500.
Okay. The other question, I was just thinking as you were talking, you know, we have this infant mortality initiative that the city's been working on. Do we use any of these funds to kind of supplement what we're doing for those families?
I don't know how much we're going to actually be able to supplement into those, although we are mentioning the infant mortality as part of the grant, the first birthday grant program that they're working with. We are planning on doing some interaction with that program, if it's not just education, to possibly assisting some people that are involved in that program, but probably more of an outreach to them more than anything else I would see with this one.
Okay. Could you let us know at the end of this year if you've had any interaction with this group?
Sure. Like I said, right now we did volunteer. One of our safe houses that we use for the current lead program is going into to assist this program. So the city is donating that, I believe, for this program. And once again, we will be more than happy to provide any educational, any outreach, anything that we can do to assist in that program.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Further questions or comments? Very good. Hearing none, time is of the essence on this. Is there a motion for a favorable report with suspension of the rules? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Okay, 4. Urging Summit County Land Bank and/or the city administration to donate unwanted lots to the Leapfrog Reading Charity in order to facilitate the building of free library parks throughout the city of Akron. Mr. Neal, you're the primary sponsor, it appears. Comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is just an opportunity for the city to partner with an organization that's been providing the services for the Reading Side program for some time. They've established one of these. Wish we had a picture of it. I'll try to get one by this evening. You have a picture of it? Is it one that you can email to everybody right now? Or? So these are. It's a very nice structure. It would add value in the communities. I'm fortunate to have a couple that residents have put much smaller than this one on their personal property, where people could just walk up and take a book or get a book. And some people even use them to leave a canned good item inside the structure for people who may, need a helping hand with something to eat. But the legislation is pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Hardy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As been our current practice, a lot of the little free libraries, if you call them that, we do license agreements in existing city parks right now. We've got a lot of Boy Scout troops, Girl Scout troops, different nonprofits all over the city that do these, and we very much encourage them. I do want to state for the record, though, that I don't think it's in the city's best interest to, in any way, shape, or form, be endorsing the donation of land to an entity that is not even a legal entity under the state of Ohio. I have here a certification from the Secretary of State's office that Leapfrog has been canceled as a legal entity, therefore no longer a 501c3. I also think it's curious that it's co-founded by a member of this council, and we are talking about urging a donation of assets to such a nonprofit. So I think I would just urge caution on how we move forward with this particular resolution. That being said, we always welcome the opportunity to do license agreements with anyone who would like to do small little free libraries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Let me see if there's anybody else. Anyone else have any questions or comments on this item? Mr. Kamer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since Mr. Hardy has brought up the issue of the Secretary of State and the license, am I allowed to ask who the Leapfrog Reading Charity individuals are or individual?
Their websites say that they were co-founded by Mr. Tar and Mr. Milkovich.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mr. Kamer. Mr. Mobian.
Just curious, I've heard a lot about this program, and I've not had the pleasure of observing, but I know they do a lot of work in my church with students. What I'm wondering, since we do this a lot, is there a way for us to untangle this, and if they find a 501c3 that's willing to be the financial entity, would that be problematic for us? I realize we're still talking about an existing council member, but when we come back in session, could we look at that if they find a separate 501c3 that's willing to be the financial agent?
Certainly, again, this is a resolution urging us to do something. We'll take a look at anything, but we can't give or donate land to an entity. There has to be an entity, and none exists that's legal in any sense.
Sure.
And so, again, we don't even need to donate land. We can do license agreements to have the little free libraries anywhere that any organization, citizen or organization would like to do.
I see them all over the city.
Thank you.
They're everywhere, it seems, but all about helping out young folk and anyone with free books. Let me see. Anybody else? No one else? Mr. Neal. Back to Mr. Neal.
Thank you. Mr. Hardy, is that their corporate name that's been expired, or is that the actual agency? Because I know there's ones that are associated with the name, then there's ones associated with maybe filing of your 1099.
This is their business license with the state of Ohio.
So
They're
the
licensed
name-
to do business.
They're-
It's their certificate in order to operate within the city or within the state.
Okay. Well, I'd like to see that, because
Be happy to.
some of that is administrative stuff that could be done, but I think that the thing here, and what I'd like for us to take a look
Mr.
at
Keith?
inside the legislation is, one, we know we have a challenge in our communities with vacant lots. And we've often talked about, we have great resources at our community learning centers. We have great resources at our rec centers. But we usually are thinking from our paradigm, where we have cars, we can drive to these facilities and utilize them. The neighborhoods where most of these would go are where you go to some of the lots. We're not able to maintain the grass. We're not able to keep up the lots. And the people in those neighborhoods most times don't have access to be able to drive to those facilities. And I'm familiar with this because, I mean, you get these if you don't file your paperwork in time, and all of this is going online and reapplying. But I mean, it's something we can have, it's something that we can have looked at. What I don't want us to do is throw the baby out with the bathwater with this thing right here. We have an opportunity, and I think Ms. Amobian spoke to it, because I know Mr. Tardo has came to the city and to the county looking to have property that he would just let him have access to build these on, and that he would maintain them. So if it's not donating the land, because I'm sure he would rather not have to pay property taxes on it.
I'm sure he'd rather not like to pay any tax.
If it's giving him access to build these in the community, and he's going to take it off of our role where we're not cutting the grass, we're not maintaining them properly, where he'll be able to do that and bring an asset into the community. I'd like for us to see, for him or anybody else who wants to be able to utilize these spaces in a productive manner within our communities.
Thank you, sir. Samples?
Thank you. I don't know if it's a question or a statement, but I know about 2 years ago, I was given a request. Leapfrog wanted to purchase the lot on the corner of Hamill. I would say Cole, or maybe Ada and Cole. I think it's Hamill and Cole. I'm just trying to reflect on this. And we were sent an email back saying that the lot, someone wanted it to build a home on. It's been almost 2 years, and that lot has grass almost 3 feet high. So what I'm concerned with, and I just have to be honest and transparent, is we don't get into this habit, because we seem to have this habit down here when the author of certain resolutions and legislation, when people don't like or agree with them, we get into this thing where we want to deny opportunity because who the author of the resolution or legislation was. That was done through the land bank, and they wanted to purchase it. So if you have someone who's willing to purchase vacant, I'm not talking about giving away anything free. We can't afford to give anything away for free. That I'm totally not in agreement with. But if we have someone who wants to purchase lots through the city or the land bank, and they want to put these gardens on them, some of these other ones have been put up, and they've been given the opportunity to put them on parcels for free. But if we could actually have him purchase them and put these lots, put libraries on these lots and get rid of the blight, I don't see what the problem is. Maybe if there was a different person bringing it in, maybe it would be different, but I know I got a whole bunch of empty lots in my ward that I would like to see something done with, instead of having to go back and forth with who's cutting the lot, who's picking the clippings up, when are they gonna get to the lot, why they do such a horrible job. I'd rather see a book, library storage or whatever on there. They have one that Holben donated the lot to them in my ward, and it's beautiful, and it's being utilized. I have a lot of lots, and I need something done with them instead of a whole bunch of empty promises and having to argue with people about who's the contractor and who's gonna cut it, and having to constantly bug John about a contractor, which I think is unfair to him. And I just want us to get past who the people are and past this whole free thing. Free, no, but I think we've got to do a better job of that. I think we do a poor job at looking past the person and the people and doing the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Swirsky?
Yes. I worked for 8 years as a literacy instructor in the Akron Public Schools, working with 9th and 10th graders that were reading at a 3rd or 4th grade level. We had a very effective program. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love working with kids. In my ward, there are a number of lending libraries that have been created by local citizens. One is at Highland Square, one is at Hereford Park, there's some down off of Palisades. They're scattered throughout my ward. I think there's one on Crosby in Oakdale. I think they're terrific that they add to what the public libraries are already providing. But I do think as an elected official that it would be, we have to consider whether it's appropriate that we would transfer land in, I don't know how many sites we're talking about here, to an ownership which is not a legal entity. I think the fact that we're being asked to do that makes me really, really uncomfortable. And I believe that how we handle this issue would speak a lot to our integrity, and we do not want that ever as public servants to be questioned. And believe me, if we did this, we would be.
Thank you. Mr. Valley, quick question. And I don't dispute for 1 second that that there's a lot of lots. There's quite a few lots out there that need to be, to get attention, that's for sure. How many lots have we cut this year, though?
We are cutting like 12 or 1,300 vacant city lots. And our goal this year is 6 to 7 cuts per lot. And again, I want council to remember, these are the nonprofits that are mainly involved with cutting the vacant city properties. And I don't know if you guys have forgotten, but this has probably been the wettest May and June, and top 3 or 4 in the history of Akron. And I mean, we really had a very difficult time at the beginning of the year. I think we're getting there. But, you know, cutting vacant city lots is always a struggle, and it takes 2 or 3 times around that cycle before they're really looking good, because the first time our contractors are arriving at that location, it could be 3 or 4 feet high, so.
Thank you, sir. I would believe that, I don't know why the property needs to be given or donated or whatever under one's entity. I mean, it seems to me that I've seen these all over the city where it's probably under, be it the city, be it private. I've seen them at houses where people live. I've seen them commercial buildings. I mean, if somebody wants to build a mini library and put it on a city lot, obviously you would need to go to the service director's office and get a license agreement. However, though, I don't think you need to own it to go out there and construct one of these. I think you could just do that, and we would work with entities out there that would, and I think it's a brilliant idea. Mr. Hardy, you
Thank you,
mentioned
Mr. Chairman. Again, I want to reemphasize, absolutely true. We do these license agreements all the time, so we share the interest, as you put it, Councilman Neal, in making sure that any child or adult has access to books and resources. I welcome that. But to me, the conversation's a little silly because we're talking about potentially donating land to someone who's one of the worst offenders on land ownership in the city. Don't check mine, go and look at the housing records. Mr. Tarl is one of the worst landlords we have in the city. And why we would ever discuss giving him land, not to mention a disgraced former city councilman, is a little ludicrous to me. That's totally separate from the conversation I think that we're absolutely in agreement on, which is how do we get more resources into the neighborhoods? That to me is what I'm struggling with.
Very good. Mr. Neal, then Mr. Kamer.
You know, there before the grace of God go I. Let him without sin cast the first stone. I'm just looking at the Leapfrog program, and I know how committed they've been, as Mr. Mobian said, at their church. Before they were at their church, they were at Mount Calvary. The work that they've done out of their own pocket. Last year, this council thought it was so important that it took $10,000 from our city council grant program to give to the Akron Summer Slide program, and I don't know what kind of numbers, we didn't get any numbers back on that, but we understand the importance of it. Here, I mean, they're doing it out of their own money. I know the reason why this resolution is before us today is because they went through all the channels of the land bank in the city, asking to take care of these properties out of their own pocket. Now, how many times have we questioned the city where it says, we don't have the ability to maintain, so we give the property over from a soccer field to a golf course to a $10 million building. We give the buildings over to people. We give these assets over.
Yep.
So, if again, I think it's, we've got, this is our last meeting. I think we've got time to come back by the time we could get back here in September to find a way, not only for the Leapfrog program, but anybody else that wants to take something that is right now a challenge for us to maintain. As Councilwoman Samples mentioned, she has a 3-foot high lot that was promised 2 years ago, something was going to be built on it. We can turn these into assets into our community. And the easy thing is, if out of this organization's own money and sweat equity, they don't maintain it, you know, we have a process in place, and now we have somebody that we can adequately go after. But, you know, this is an opportunity for us to put something in place, not only for this organization, but that we can utilize with others, where we could take right now these things that are costing the city money and turn them into an asset for the community.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Kamer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reading is important. I've been reading to children at Firestone Park Elementary since 2008 when I got my real estate license, and I continue doing it. I saw the library that has a nice little wooden walking path with the benches. That's really nice, but I would like us as a city to move forward with something like that. If it's putting that into the budget for next year, I would definitely want one of those in my ward for children to participate, read, and take advantage of, and hopefully we can find out, you know, who's going to maintain the grass and the flowers and stuff like that, because I think we as a city should move forward. I think Mr. Hardy said a lot of things that I don't need to say, but this resolution is silly because of the one individual's name that is attached to it and that is involved, that I think is just going to cause problems. But I encourage and this is my resolution to the administration, let's move forward as a city with something like this, because I do think it's a need, but not with this individual.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Cameron. I know, like I mentioned, it would be interesting to see how many we have in the city. I know I've seen quite a few all over. I know in Ward 10, there's 10 of them. Mr. Hardy, you has had something, and then Mr. Milkovich.
I would just want to add, and again, I totally agree with what Councilman Neal's talking about when we talk about getting our unused lots into productive hands, and they don't have to be tax producing, certainly. They just need to be productive. But I think we have to ask ourselves, why did the land bank pass on Leapfrog? Why did all of these other private sales pass? Again, we're talking about someone who cannot, I mean, I'm very passionate, as many of you are around this horseshoe, about how we improve housing conditions for people who live in our city. And he is one of the worst offenders when it comes to housing condition. And I'm not ashamed to say that because it's factual and in the record. It's public record. So I think that's why people are questioning whether or not to extend a hand from a land use perspective to Leapfrog. It's not because people don't want to achieve similar goals, but they don't trust the entity to do what it says it's going to do.
Mr. Milkovich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. Boy, I'm just taken back by what I just heard. It's something. It really is something. You know, we started, as my friend and I, 6 years ago. I was down in the State House when the governor came with the third grade reading guarantee. And instead of sitting around, we went to work. We found a program over in Philadelphia, and we modeled ourselves after that program. It's been 6 years since we've been doing this program. And we've been moving around the city. This year we are over at Antioch Baptist Church, Pastor Greg Harrison. There are 3 failing schools in that area. The adults need to get out of the room. It's about the children. There have been studies that have been done that show the proven effectiveness of literacy in youth has a proportional decrease in crime. Let's get books in these children's hands, not guns. And these lots that are all over the city, let's get them in use. A lot of our children, especially poor kids like I, transportation is a huge hindrance to get to the libraries. Now, with technology, you can go online, but with Akron having the second highest poverty rate in the country, a lot of our kids don't have access to the internet. It's been a battle, but it's not personal. It's never personal with me. It's always been about helping. You know, I'm very fortunate. I came here from a communist country. My mom and dad brought me, my brother and I, for a better education. I chose a harder route. I went to worked in the factory. My brother educated himself out of poverty, out of the area where I lived. But this is not about personal vendettas that some of us have. This is about our children.
Thank you.
So, and about the maintenance of it, we'll be doing the maintenance on it. We'll be mowing the grass, and we went through the proper channels, and No, it's political.
Question, Mr. Milkovich. Why is it that you have to own the property? Why can't we just have like a lease license agreement or what have you, or working through?
We could do that. We're willing to work with, you know, with the
Legislation.
city.
Yeah, I just said to
Right.
give the property. Ms. Landers-Nish? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, I was just letting this committee know that the Water Bureau, Jeff Bernowski, and his staff are here to provide a special presentation. It was supposed to start at 1:45 about an RFP they're putting out for new water meters. The staff does have some limited time, so they were probably going to get started in about 5 minutes, understanding that this committee's still meeting, but I just wanted to let you guys know that that presentation will be going on in conference room 1.
Thank you. Okay, very good. I'd like to entertain a motion at this point.
Motion for what?
I'm looking around, I'm not seeing anyone making a motion.
Motion to take a vote?
Motion to take a vote, yeah. I'd like to hear an adverse report. Thank you. Okay, there's a motion for an adverse report, and there's a second. All those in favor? Okay, go ahead. What's your question?
We've had some healthy discussion about the value of the program, even from those who are voting for an adverse report. I'd like to see us take time and bring something in. I mean, we've got a month. We can bring something in where we can be able to move on this.
I think you could bring something in perhaps after that time. Right now, there's a motion on the floor for an adverse report, and there's a second. And if you'd like to bring something back in September, that's certainly a prerogative that you may have at this point. But right now, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the adverse report signify by saying aye. Aye. Those against?
Nay.
Okay, roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Fusco.
No. I mean, yes, in favor of the adverse report.
Amobian. Kamer. Neal.
Nay.
Swirsky.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, very
3
good.
to
We'll
2.
work that out this evening. I believe that's all that's coming before the committee. We do have that presentation, 1:45. Thanks.
In a few minutes. It's on the smart meters. Water
Keith.
Sorry it took so long friggin' planning. Oh, no, it is. I agree. No, it's just...
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I would like to start this meeting of public service. Okay, all committee members are present, and we have before us the minutes from our previous meeting. Is there a motion to accept the minutes?
Second.
I had a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, the minutes will pass. I'd like to look at our old agenda on public service. We are going to file piece number 1, 2, and 3. Objections were heard, and there were no changes to the assessments. So those will be filed from our previous, what we've had holding on there for our old agenda. And now we will go to what's new under public service. And we have the first piece before us is number 5, which is an ordinance determining to proceed with and levy special assessments for the improvement of certain streets in the city between certain termini by providing street cleaning services and street lighting, approving the report of the Assessment Equalization Board, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this is our annual special assessment legislation. This approves the report of the Assessment Equalization Board. It is with no increase, same cost as last year, and we would really appreciate suspension of the rules.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. Is there any comment or questions from the committee members? Councilman Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I often get questions from residents about the street cleaning in particular, in the fact that on unimproved streets there aren't any curbing or anything there, and they don't really see street cleaning on a lot of those. Is that rate pretty much just straight across the board for anybody and everybody?
Yes, that is true. Basically, since there is a grass swale area, it's not as urgent for us to get the grit materials out of the roadway before it gets into the sewer systems, so we're capable of sweeping it less, and they are billed less accordingly.
Oh, okay, so there is okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, just so I have something to, give them an answer to, when I get those calls, because they do come in, and then somebody will say, well, my street light's been out for 2 years, why am I getting charged for it? And I'll say, because you haven't called in to, get it repaired, so.
Yes.
But, no, that's good to know, so that, I know, I'm sure other people have had questions about the streets.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions from committee members? Any questions from members of council that are in the chambers on this piece? Hearing and seeing none, the request was for suspension of the rules. Do I have a motion for suspension of the rules?
Suspension of the rules?
Okay, and I have a second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, this would place a suspension of the rules on tonight's agenda. Ordinance determining, number 6, ordinance determining to proceed with the improvement of Market Street between the termini of Westgate Circle and Portage Path, North Main Street between the termini of Olive Street and East Talmadge Avenue, and North High Street between the termini of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and East Market Street by resurfacing and declaring an emergency.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, council previously passed an ordinance allowing us to enter into an agreement with ODOT for this work, and this ordinance would allow us to proceed to get the work done. These are streets that obviously need resurfacing, and suspension of the rules would be much appreciated.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of council on the committee? Councilman Hoke.
Yeah, I have a request since we're talking about resurfacing and repaving, and I know that this year that Market Street from I-76 to Canton Road was scheduled for this year and was canceled. It's not in real dire need as far as you know, the entire area, but there is one particular area between Magro Road and Hilbish, and it's like driving on the moon. If I would imagine driving on the moon, I've never been there, but I would think that would be, you know, pretty much the same way. Is there any way to get some strip patching there that would, you know, wait so that it would keep it? Because I know it's going to be probably another year before we even get to that. So
I know Mr. Hall is looking into renting a machine that will allow us to do some milling work. But we can look at strip patching for sure. I know the section you're speaking of, and it is, some parts of it are in pretty poor condition.
Yeah, pretty nasty. Okay.
Probably won't last until the actual full job is done.
No,
so
no, we might
let's
have
look
to
at it.
Close a street or detour traffic or do something. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. Any other committee members? Anyone on council that has a concern about this piece? Suspension. I would just like to mention one thing. I do have a motion for suspension of rules. So is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, we will place this as suspension of rules. I have calls because of what's Market Street running through Ward 8. This is a state route. So for us to do anything of in-depth proportion, we need the approval, and would that be, tell me what we need, because I don't want to be saying the wrong thing.
I think more importantly, it's the ODOT's participation in the cost. It allows us to get these roads done with a lot less city funds involved. Like this project consists of $789,000 of ODOT funding and 40 of IT, and then 51 of GO. So we're getting about almost 3 miles of road paved for 126 plus 51. So the costs are significantly less if we participate with ODOT.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. That has already been voted on, so now we will move to number 7, is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee without the formality of publicly advertising for bids to enter into a contract or contracts for construction of the Yellow Creek Bank Stabilization Project and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore.
Yes, we had an issue with a sewer line in the Yellow Creek area. It's actually been exposed. I got a picture I want to show you.
Mr. Moore, Where would that be about? Would you be able to give us a general area?
You know where Gasoline Alley is?
Yeah,
Behind
yeah,
there,
sure do.
close in that general area. But obviously, we need to do something before that pipe would actually break and do something bad to the river there. So we'd like to get in and stabilize the bank.
Absolutely. What do you say? A picture's worth 1,000 words, so that picture is worth 1,000 words. Any comments from members of the committee? Councilman Hoke?
Is that a storm sewer?
Sanitary.
It's
a sanitary.
That's a sanitary sewer. Yeah, let's fix that.
I agree.
Yeah. All those lovely awards that we get in our water department could go right down the drain with one quick little break here. Any comments from council members in the chambers? Hearing and seeing none, I will make a motion for suspension of the rules. Is there a second? Second. I have 2 seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be placed as suspension of the rules. Number 8, ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee, after publicly advertising for bids, to enter into a contract or contracts for the modernization of the 2 municipal building elevators and declaring an emergency. John Moore.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, over the last few years, the elevators have been kind of hit or miss in the building. In fact, at one point last year, we had both of them out at the same time. They were installed in the 70s. They've obviously reached the end of their useful life. We would like to proceed with the full modernization of both elevators, and it's approximately $600K.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Okay, please, Councilman Kamer.
Madam Chairman, thank you. I appreciate it. I just want to share with you, as I brought this young individual with me that sits behind me, that's a Ward 7 Firestone Park resident, down to shadow me today. We actually got in the elevators in the basement. And I don't know exactly what words he used, but he did say these are very old elevators. And so I guess this is a good thing moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilwoman Samples.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For someone who's worked in that building for almost 8 years, I've seen those elevators go down. I've gotten stuck in one of those elevators before. And it seems like we've probably spent a couple million trying to maintenance them. Do we have the same company that we use over and over again? Is there someone else that we may need to talk to? Do we send this out for bids? It just seems that we are always having broken elevators over there. I saw a post that the municipal court put up maybe last week or a week and a half ago, where 2 of the elevators went down, and they had to like give people notices to come to court. So I don't know, what do we do to fix that when we've spent so much money? Is it the vendor? Who's the person that we're having service them? I'm just concerned that we've spent a lot of money.
Yeah, I would say there's really only about 4 elevator companies. You have Kone and ThyssenKrupp and Otis, and what's the other one? Help me. But anyway, there's only really 4 major players. We're going to get prices from all of those. Obviously, funds are important,
Yes.
so we will look at their proposals and hopefully select the best, most qualified elevator company.
Well, the new paneling is nice, but it doesn't matter if you're getting
That's
stuck
not
in the
new
elevator.
paneling. I've been here since '87, and I haven't seen a change.
No, there's new paneling. I was just over there. I was impressed
Oh,
by the
over there,
paneling.
yeah. Not
but
here.
not here. We just have to figure out, it seems like we're spending a lot of money.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Any comments from members of council? Councilwoman Amodia.
Now, when you use the word modernization, are we talking about new elevators?
I won't say new, I will say totally rehabbed. I mean, obviously, the Chaseway is going to be the same, but they're probably going to need to put in new rail systems, obviously new circuitry for it's solid state nowadays instead of what we have now. There'll be a total rehab of both elevators.
And those are the ones out there?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And it'll be warranty for 25, 30 years?
That'll be a part of their proposal, but we would certainly hope the longest one possible.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from members of council? I think these things that have come before us today in public service, I hope, I mean, I do, I won't speak for anybody else, you get a better understanding of how difficult it is to balance everything. Here we are, elevators that are going down that we're putting tons of money into, a sanitary sewer that could at any time something happen, Market Street and all these other streets that we know we're getting claims for because of whatever. So this is not an easy thing to be making these determinations of what should come before us and what does end up coming before us, and then us doing our due diligence to make sure that it's a need, because we certainly aren't where we into the wants yet. We are just into needs. So I commend all the people that work on this and try to decide what should come forward, because there's so much. So with that, I believe that I need a motion here, and I believe that you request a suspension of the rules.
Yes, please.
So is there a motion for suspension of the rules, Councilman Samples? Okay, is there a second? And I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be a suspension of the rules this evening. Is there anything else to come before this committee? Councilwoman.
Madam Chair, I was just wondering if it's possible, with some of the resources that we use from issue $4 for fixing roads, if we can get a breakdown here soon of by ward, I'd appreciate that. I continue, me personally, to feel like my car is about to drop out after I hit a pothole. I was answering the phones today, and of course we get the calls coming in here, even here to council. So we can see that. I don't know if we plan to do some kind of communications to the community about how far we are and all that good stuff that would help to kind of take the ping out of.
We can certainly provide that information, and we will do that within the week.
Thank you, sir.
If there's nothing else to come before us, we are adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Which one? That one? Yeah, I've closed it twice. I'll tell the policeman to do it that way.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move forward with the Public Safety Committee meeting, please. All members are present, and we did have a meeting last week. Can we get approval of those minutes, please?
So moved.
All in favor? Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. We have one new piece in front of us today, and it's ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent without the formality of publicly advertising for bids to enter into a contract for the purchase of a Faro 360-degree 3D laser scanner and related Peripherals, that's a good word. And warranties for the use of Akron Police Department to declare an emergency. We have Captain Brewer of the Akron Police Department with us and Sergeant Armstead.
Yes, we're asking that the committee consider suspension of the rules for this legislation so that we can go ahead with the purchase. I brought Sergeant Armstead with me so that he can go over some of the technical matters of the scanner we're requesting.
All right, thank you. With that, hopefully the committee members have looked over the legislation. Is there any questions or comments? Committee members first. Oh, yeah, Sergeant, can you explain that a little bit, please? Thanks. Good question.
Yes. The 360 scanner, it essentially takes...
Pull that switch in front of you, sir. There you go.
How about that?
There you
Is
go.
that better? Okay. It essentially takes about 1 million pictures of a scene, a small area. If you've tried to look at any homes for sale recently and you see that you can do the 360 tour, that's essentially what it will do for a scene, whether it be a traffic scene, a homicide. The benefit to that is that it takes out the impartiality of the detective, whereas we had to know in the past what was important at a crime scene. The camera doesn't. It takes a picture of everything. And then after the fact, we can go back and find out distances, where exactly those things were. The camera will also provide deliverables. In other words, it'll provide reports that we can deliver to the, to the court for testimony. And it is also hashed, which means it has a SHA value attached to it, which it authenticates the work. So it takes a lot of the work out of the detective's hands, although it will only take one detective to set it up and use it. As for the purposes of making diagrams and reduplicating a scene, it will do the work of 3 detectives.
Thank you. Now we'll take questions. Thanks, Mayor. Any questions, committee members? Councilwoman Sanders, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems like this is a really significant piece of equipment.
It is.
So does the body-worn camera work in tandem with this piece? That's the part 2. One. The second part is, how do you get it to the site? What if there's 2 cases simultaneously? How do we have a need for more than one, or?
Your first question, the body-worn cameras will not. There are other applications where you can use other photographic equipment to mix the digital formats together and basically create an even bigger image, but the body-worn cameras don't have that capability. No, they would not be used with that. Now, we do have other ways of making reports where we could add that in, but it wouldn't be part of the 360 presentation. And your second question is, this does have a lot of applications. The one that we are purchasing does not have the distance that we would necessarily want to use for, let's say, a traffic crash, because traffic crashes tend to take up a larger area. But it would be in the hands of the crime scene unit, and we would take it to the scene, set it up, deploy it, recover it, and if we had to go to another scene after that, that scene would just remain safe until we could get there to deploy it at a different scene.
Just a follow-up question, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So how is the data, how is it stored? Is this cloud-based, or how do we use it?
I'm unfamiliar with the software that operates it. I do believe it's internal storage. It produces a document, essentially. So it would be stored as a document. We would probably, more than likely, print that out onto a hard copy and save the hard copy.
I mean, it just seems like a really sophisticated piece of equipment. If it's going to do all of that to capture crime scenes in 3D, that we would be holding the data somewhere. It just seems that way. And I guess my other part of that question, because we have the body-worn cameras, and it looks like this is, are we sending this out to bid, or is this a single source?
No, this would not be sole source. The reason is there are two main manufacturers. There's Faro and Leica. The Faro is the one that has geared their product towards law enforcement. Leica has not. So in addition, Faro offers free training for law enforcement. It's also the same system that BCI uses, and BCI will supplement any training that Faro cannot give us.
Okay. So before today, even if we pass it out today, could you find out definitely how we're keeping the data?
I will try and get you an answer as soon as I can to that.
Can we know that today before we pass it out?
I don't know. Yeah, I could probably get you an answer here shortly. I will just have to make a phone call.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay,
could we?
sure.
Thank you.
Do you have our email addresses, or can you email that to Bob Keith?
I can.
Clerk of Council, okay. And then Bob can forward it to us or whatever.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, I know I know the request is to pass it out. I think that it's important to know where the data goes, and if in fact, before we approve it, so hopefully we'll have that before council meeting this evening.
Okay. See what you can do for us, Sergeant. I
Thank
certainly
you.
appreciate it. Thanks, Councilwoman. Any other questions or comments, committee members? Council members in chambers? All right, with that, I know Captain Brewer, oh, what? Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. We have to refer this item for this evening. Do we have a second?
Second.
So everybody in favor of referring this item to this evening, say aye. Anybody opposed? All right, so we'll refer that to this evening, and hopefully Sergeant can get us that information. So thanks, Captain, I appreciate it. All right, thanks. All right, thank you. With that, we're adjourned.
Okay, next we have rules, correct?
I'd like to call the Rules Committee to order. Okay, all members are present. Okay, wait a minute. Oh, here we go. Okay. On our old agenda, number 1 was a resolution urging the Ohio Secretary of State and the Ohio General Assembly to create a process by which independent, nonpartisan voters may vote in a political party's primary without declaring for that party and declaring an emergency. I have asked the sponsor of that piece, and they would like to take time on that piece. So I think it might be good if I have a motion for time. I have a motion for time. And a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And we will place that once again on time. Don't even know if that was necessary, but there we go. Number 2 before us is an ordinance, on the old agenda, was an ordinance amending and supplementing Title III and Administration, Chapter 30, Mayor and Council, Section 30.11, limits on monetary and in-kind contributions and loans of the Akron Codified Ordinances and declaring an emergency. And the sponsor for this piece, did you? Oh, I apologize. Go ahead, Councilman Hubbard.
Yes, Madam Chairman, thank you. We've been considering this for almost 3 weeks, and
I think this is on the monetary and in-kind contribution loans. I think
I'm
it's-
sorry.
That's okay. That's why I was glancing over there. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman Neal.
Thank you. We could take time on this. It wouldn't impact anything for another 3 years as it is that, but I would like to note, hopefully everybody read today's paper.
I don't get the beacon anymore. Go ahead. I don't.
But hopefully you read the paper, and just the challenge that PACs present when you're talking about providing good legislation. Read today's paper. There's an article in there about the reason why we have the surcharge on our electric bills now. It may be highly influenced by money paid, significant money paid by PACs. I know ours is a little bit different, but the article that was provided as supporting documentation for bringing in the legislation mentioned the same concern on how PAC money influences our local races. So, but we could take time on it. Thank you.
The sponsor has requested time. Is there a motion from someone on the committee for time? Okay. I have a motion. Is there a second? I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Good. Okay, we also have number 3, which was an ordinance authorizing and directing the submission to the electors of the City of Akron, a proposal to amend the Charter of the City of Akron to establish nonpartisan general elections, to eliminate municipal primary elections, to establish nomination by petition, all to be voted upon at the next regular citywide election on November the 5th, 2019, and declaring an emergency. Okay. We do have before us also a piece that was a memorandum to City Council from the Director of Law about the proposed Charter Amendment Ordinance. I would like to, before we go any further, to make sure that everyone, certainly on the committee, and if not, council members have received this memorandum? No? Okay. It could possibly be in your boxes, I would imagine. I would be happy to read it for the record, but it's a lot to read.
Just a minute.
It's a, yeah. I didn't even see her over there. Okay. I'm happy to read it in. Okay. But I think all of you can do that on your own. So we'll just take a moment so that everyone gets a copy of this. Did you get a copy? Okay. We will just take a few minutes. This is not a moment of silence. This is a moment to read over this piece before we move into it.
Right there.
Okay, I think we've given. Thank you. Okay, I'm hoping that everyone had a moment to look over this, this memorandum. And so now I would like to go right into the discussion of this piece, this ordinance that is before us, which is, I have already read out loud, and the two things is going to nonpartisan general elections and to eliminate municipal primary elections and to establish nomination by petition. So, having said, having the opportunity to look at the memorandum from our law director, is there from the committee any questions or concerns? Anyone from the committee? Councilwoman Amobian.
I read this and...
Which one are we speaking to? The memorandum?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is that the only thing we're addressing now?
Well, we have the ordinance, so...
Oh, no, I'm speaking to the memorandum, which is what we've been waiting on. I read this, and I read it quickly, and I certainly have a number of questions. But let me just first ask this. When we have something from council to go before the law department, and if there isn't enough time for our department to do the work that's needed, how do we determine that we farm it out to another firm to get us a response so that we would have some time to ask questions and do due diligence in vetting the material that we are requesting? We requested this 2 weeks ago.
Great.
And whatever period of time. It's been enough time that we could have gotten a response where we could have answered some of these questions or asked some of these questions, answered them, and had a piece of legislation before us to vote on, yea or nay, up or down. So is there a process that we need to follow in order to get the legal representation that we deserve to have? Is there someone here who can answer that for me, please?
I'll be more than happy to ask if anyone from the law department would like to answer that. However...
No, Madam Chair, it's not would like to. I would like the law department to answer the question. I am an elected official. I should be able to ask my legal department that represents us a simple question.
Yes,
and they should give us an answer.
Yes, you are. But as chair of the committee, I have to call on that person to speak.
But you don't have to do that, Madam Chair.
Director Belfons, please go right ahead.
Well, I will say from the outset that I find the question you asked very troubling, and to some degree, again, it illustrates a fundamental issue that I think the law department encounters. The law department wasn't notified in advance about this piece. There was nobody from city council who came and sat and consulted and conferred with the law department prior to just simply being informed that this was the piece that was requested in the form that it was requested. So so the proponent of the legislation was given the legislation as requested. This law department moved extremely quickly to address and do as comprehensive a review as was possible given the time constraints. So I really take exception to the suggestion that this has been sitting or that there hasn't been prompt action.
And I take exception to your response in that 2 weeks is more than enough time to come up with a piece of legislation that is clearly what we're asking for. It's just something to present to the voters that we would like to consider a nonpartisan ballot for municipal elected officials.
Just to be clear, that was not what City Council asked for. City Council requested that the law department weigh in on a piece that it was given to be put into a form, the proper format, that was not a product of the law department.
But as our legal representative, and that is where the question in my mind comes. If you are our legal representative and you know what we are asking for, wanting, why couldn't you farm it out to someone else who could easily answer the question? Or if you were stumped with what we wanted, then why couldn't it have been done? This seems so simple to me, what we're asking. It is not complicated at all. We're simply asking our law department to draft a piece of legislation that we can put forth to the voters to do a nonpartisan ballot.
Just to be very clear, the law department wasn't asked to draft this piece. Again, it was not asked to draft the piece. The law department was given a piece that was already completed and asked to prepare it to be given. The law department wasn't consulted about the piece, nor was the law department asked to opine about the piece. That came after the introduction of the piece. So I just want to be very clear that that's how this came before this body.
I don't understand the difference. If we gave you a piece that was not properly formatted for us to take to the Board of Elections, and you're our lawyer, then you would advise us as to what we needed to do.
No, it is properly formatted. What happened is after it was presented to council, it was then that there was a request for the substance to be examined by the law department.
That is only part of what we're asking for, but you know, this continues to be a real concern that whether we have a legal department that represents us or not.
Are there any members?
Well, I take exception to that. I take great exception, and it's very offensive because I know that each and every person in the law department is absolutely working hard for this body. And I would imagine that there are many sitting here at the table who would echo that and would stand to relay the service that is given by the law department every day of the week, including weekends.
I appreciate your exception, but I take exception to that as well, because there's no reason why we cannot have dedicated legal time to draft legislation that we want when we want it. Thank you very much.
Okay, are there any other members of council that want to speak on the memorandum or the piece before us? Please clarify which one you're speaking on to. Okay, Councilman Kilby? Oh, well, we're still in committee. Is there nothing? Okay. Okay, Councilman Kilby.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, it was over 3 weeks ago I took this ordinance to the law department, and I think there's a fundamental problem in that a lot of cities have gone to elected law directors. If you want to know the truth, the law director works for the mayor, not for us. That's my opinion. That's pretty obvious, no matter what the law director may say. And in 3 weeks, we could have at least got an opinion, a memorandum of the objections before today. Today is the last council meeting of the summer, and I think the 7th of August is the deadline to put something on the ballot. So we really don't have time to make any corrections if we wanted to. So I'm going to address the opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, but I would just say it talks about, the ordinance is pretty, charter change is pretty simple. It eliminates the primary system, and if you eliminate the primary system, these other mentions of the primary, in my opinion, are nullified in the charter. There's 3 other sections of the charter the law director points out that are in the charter, and then 2 sections in the code. So, you know, my humble layman's opinion, if you eliminate the primary, they don't mean anything. They're nullified. So I don't see the ambiguity, I don't see where it's that ambiguous. And I'm not sure who is going to challenge this, but I guess I would like to ask the law director, let's just say, it seems like all your objections are the fact that we eliminate the primary. Is there any problems at all with eliminating partisan elections? Is there any, I don't see any objection to that at all in your memorandum. Is there anything that that would cause a problem in?
Law Director, would you like to answer that question?
Sure. I think you know, what I'm saying in the memo speaks for itself. I'm not speaking to the wisdom or the policy of whether or not to eliminate partisan elections. No, there is not anything going to the legality or the wisdom of doing that. So that's correct.
So your problem is the primary, the part that eliminates the primary, that's the objection or that you have to this?
I want to be very clear. This body asked for me to review this after this piece was submitted. And so what I have in the memorandum is a product of that request. And what I'm pointing out are the issues that you, as city council members, should take into account when you evaluate this.
Right.
I'm not the proponent, and I'm not the person voting for this. So that's for you to decide. So
Right.
The memo speaks for itself with respect to the issues of concern with respect to the contents of the piece.
Okay, now the section that talks about there's no definition of qualified electors, aren't there other sections of the charter that define that are not being repealed? Isn't there other sections of the charter that mentions electors who can vote on something like this? To me, an elector is somebody that can vote. That's plain and simple to me. Anybody, whether they're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent, that's what an elector is. Is that not correct?
What I would say is, again, you can evaluate the contents of the memorandum, and it speaks for itself.
Okay.
But I'm not going to get into a debate over
Well, you
where
say-
qualified electors is defined and
you
where
say,
it's not, and so on. But the point is that it creates ambiguity.
Okay, but you say there's no definition for the qualified electors. Doesn't just the term qualified elector speak for itself? That means a voter, correct?
I'm telling you that it creates ambiguity.
Okay.
Okay?
I know. All right, so what would happen? Let me ask you this, Ms. Belfont. Let's say we did put this on the ballot and the voters approved it. What would have to happen to these other sections you mentioned, the 3 other sections of the charter that uses the term primary, and the 2 sections of the code where they use the term primary? What would they mean? Would they mean anything? Because it seemed to be, to me, they would be nullified. If there's no primary, they mean nothing. So,
Law Director, would you like to answer that question?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
okay, let me start again. Let's say we did put this on the ballot, and the voters did approve this charter change to eliminate the primary. What would that do to the other sections of the charter? You said there's 5 sections of the charter. We're eliminating 2, and there's 2 places in the code you mentioned where it talks about the primary. So those 3 sections of the charter that mention the word primary and the 2 sections of the code that mention the word primary, would they have any meaning whatsoever if there's no primary?
I'm not sure I understand your question,
What
but
would they-
what I'm telling you is that there are multiple references in the charter and the code that use the word primary.
Okay.
And I have highlighted in the memorandum several issues that are of greatest concern, and so that's what I can tell you. So whether or not how one would interpret or what would happen to a particular section of the code or the charter if you don't go and clean those up and eliminate the word primary, I can't opine on that. I can look into that more deeply, but that's not the subject of this memorandum at this moment.
Would that, cleaning up the charter, would that be something that the Charter Review Commission would be obligated to do if this was passed?
No.
No? Okay.
No, that's not.
So
I mean,
I
the Charter
know,
Review
I've read the
Commission-
charter a number of times. I remember seeing sections that are going back to when the charter was first put into place, that there's a footnote or something in parentheses saying this has been repealed, this has been changed, or nullified. So I would say, you know, that's my opinion, but I'm not a lawyer, and unfortunately, we don't have time. I don't have time to consult with a lawyer to give their opinion, and I guess my opinion really doesn't matter because I'm not a lawyer. But I would like this committee to vote on this today and take it to the council.
Thank you. Okay.
I still think it's a good idea. The whole idea of doing away with the primary was to save money, as the administration advocated when they pushed their charter amendment through. This would save money. There's been a lot of talk about why people don't vote in primaries. Well, we don't know why. They're confused or they don't care, but why don't we just do away with primaries then, if that's the problem, and just have an election? As far as like the section in this here opinion that talks about there's no differentiation between somebody running for a ward or a at-large seat, I think there's other parts of the charter that define that would not be changed. So I would just ask the committee to bring this to a vote tonight at 7.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to turn over to Councilman Kamer, who's on the committee.
No, I'm not on the
you are not.
committee.
Okay, I apologize.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just would request if I'm allowed to ask the law director if the sponsor of this legislation has requested any sit-down conversations over the last 3 weeks with the law department.
No.
Okay. With that, I originally supported this idea. I think we should leave it up to the voters, but this is, as a legislator, I think I'm a pretty good legislator, and it starts with conversation. It starts with sitting down with the individuals that are able to help. I have a lot of good legislation that I've had passed by my colleagues the last 8 years, and I'm just disappointed that we're sitting here talking about this, that we could be voting on this. So like I said, I originally supported this. I still think we should leave it up to the voters, but this just seems like a mess. And I think the conversation should have started several weeks ago with the law department. Even if they're not on board with this ideal, you still sit down with them and build that relationship and come out with a very good piece that you bring to the 12 other colleagues that you have here. So I just wanted to make my voice heard. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Kamer. Councilman Fusco.
Thank you. I'd had when this first came in, asked the sponsor if the law department had an opportunity to approve, weigh in, what have you. That didn't happen. And it's the substance of the legislation that we vote on. And I, we're all taking exception, I guess, with certain situations, but I certainly appreciate Mr. Kamer's comments in terms of, working with the law department. Obviously been here for some time, and I know on the weekends I've called people up to make sure the language and what was said did not smack the charter. And I also find it, I guess not surprising, somewhat surprising though, that over the last 8-10 years, we've had 4, 5, 6 law directors, and it seems as though that some of us can't work with any law director whatsoever. And that's very unfortunate, because our jobs, our task here is to bring in, present, and vote on legislation that advances our city, and not to be able to, as mentioned, develop that relationship or at least a professional discussion over legislation is important. But with this memorandum especially, I would recommend an adverse report.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Councilman Neal here, and then I'll be happy to go over here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just keeping in context, the reason that brought the original legislation to us first, as Councilman Kilby spoke of, it was to save the city money, to protect the vote of the military, and to increase voter turnout. Now, this council has current, recent historical evidence that when we moved the primary, it did not save the city money, it did not increase voter turnout, and it cost us money. Now, a lot of the argument last time we were talking about this was about Republicans, Republicans, Republicans. Once we're elected, leave the party politics aside. Let's do what's best for the city. What's best for the city in Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland, 77% of the cities in this nation have determined that a primary is not needed anymore. What is best, it eliminates the cost totally, and it does not discriminate against the majority of the voters within the city of Akron, because the majority of the voters do not belong to either party. So you talk about the legislation. There was a piece, if you remember when we were having a debate about moving the primary or not, we had reached out to the law department, and the law department was working on a piece. It's still in the hopper, so to speak, on them drafting the legislation about a nonpartisan race. Because at that time we were talking about, hey, we don't have time. So we were working with them. I believe I was working with Mr. Angeloni. I'm sorry, man, I keep messing up your name. So if, this is the point I want to get to. If this council wants to do what's best for the city, if this council truly wants to do what's best for the city, we have recent evidence that has been presented to us that the past legislation that was passed and voted on did not achieve this goal. It actually lost money, and it decreased voter turnout. Now we have a chance to give the citizens an opportunity to decide if they want to do different. We're spending a lot of time on this. Of course, this isn't going to impact anything until, I think, 2023. But I think it's important for us to rectify the error that we made in telling the citizens that it was going to save money, telling the citizens that it was going to increase voter turnout, and it did neither. Matter of fact, what it did is it disenfranchised a majority of the citizens. So there's several issues here. One, as far as legislatively, the law department was working on something. And so they can just pull that out if we really want to do what's best for the city and give them an opportunity to vote.
Councilman Kilby.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to address the criticism directed towards me about not consulting with the law department. We don't have an independent law department. The law director is appointed by the mayor, works at the pleasure of the mayor. We don't ratify that appointment at all. So the law director doesn't do what the mayor wants the law director to do. They're not going to be law director too much longer. So I've never, ever asked the law director to draft any legislation. I don't see where it says we have to do that. We have the right to present legislation to this council, and that's what I did. And I consulted with lawyers. And unfortunately, since these objections are laid on us the last minute, I don't have the time to consult with them. And I'm not a lawyer. So unfortunately, this legislation cannot be considered, cannot be corrected if there is any need for correction. And there's opinions, like the law director has her opinion, there's other lawyers that may have another opinion. It's us to decide what to do. Now last year, when we were considering these charter changes, the administration, their big thing was let the voters decide. So I'm saying, why don't we let the voters decide this? That's all I'm saying. Let's put this on the ballot and let the voters decide if they think it's a good thing or a bad thing to have nonpartisan elections, and do away with the primary to save money.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Councilman Fusco? Oh, Freeman.
Okay. I just, I kind of like, I like the idea, the samples of what we've been talking about. My reservation is there seems to be some duplicity coming from us in that we said, let's try May primaries. And so voters said, okay, let's try May primaries. And we've given it one cycle, and we're trying to judge whether it was successful or not by that one cycle. So I have, and I'm not saying I'm totally opposed to the idea, but I would like to let us at least give one more cycle to May primaries to see if indeed, it is a bust and we were wrong. But I guess I would say, in my opinion, this is a bit premature. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Fusco, then Councilman Hoke.
Thank you, Chair. The one item here that I don't know for a fact that this costs more or less the cost. I haven't seen any data whatsoever on that. However, though, I did do some analysis in terms of comparing, and I know before we talked about 2015 versus 2019, apples and oranges, totally apples and oranges. However, though, if you think about 2013 versus 2019, and you look at where was similarities in terms of award races, okay? There was an at-large race in 13 that took all the attention, if you will, at no mayoral, and in 2019 there's primarily an at-large race as well as not much of a mayoral, but to drive out the turnout. However, in 4 wards, and I'll share this with anyone individually, but in 4 wards, 3 out of the 4 wards, there was an increased turnout. 1 ward had a decrease in turnout from 13 to 19. And overall, there was increase citywide in 2019 versus 2013. However, it's important to give the fact there was more races citywide in terms of the wards. However, though, out of the 4 wards, 3 of them had an increase in turnout in 2019 versus 2013. And that's the one thing, if that's the closest thing that I can think of to look at whenever you're going to consider the increase in turnout was 13 versus 19 and not 15. And indications is that there was more people participating. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Fuss. Councilman Hoke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Belfance, I had a question pertaining to this, and if it's kind of like a if. Okay. Looking at this and knowing what we know now about some of the problems that could arise from this, if we decided to go ahead and pass this and put it on the ballot, what would the law department consider doing one way or another if that was done?
Well, the answer, I can't think of what the law department would do if you, whatever you decided, but the point is that this body several weeks ago asked the law department to look at this piece. What the law department has done is to respond to the request of City Council to do just that. And the whole purpose of that is to assist all of you to make a better decision and to shape whatever legislation, if any, you decide you want to shape to create a better product. And that was the whole point of this body asking the law department to do just that. Whether you decide as a body to adopt this piece of legislation, my job is to tell you what potential pitfalls there may be, which is what I've done and what you've asked me to do. If you decide you want to pass a different piece of legislation or a third piece of legislation, that's for this body, that's what you do, and that's for this body to consider doing. Whether it's a good idea to have primaries, not have primaries, that's for this body to consider. My job is to assist you to shape the best legislation you can shape, and that's all I'm doing. But that's where my role ends, and that's where you pick up, is to consider the policy and whether or not you wish to do it or not. I hope that answers your question.
But do you feel as a law director that, you know, with the ambiguity that you know, it brings and the question marks and wondering whether this would be legal with the charter and the code of ordinance and you know,
Yes.
everything, don't you feel that the law department would have to react in some manner because it was not in accordance with our charter?
Well, I think that what would happen is there would be potential situations that could arise where the law department is reacting to legal challenges to the legislation or would be trying, for example, if for some reason there was a recall that began, you would literally have a void, a hole in the charter because there would be no date by which to file a petition for the recall. There would be no deadline, so you would be in perpetual limbo, for example. That's what I'm trying to inform City Council about, and for their consideration if and when they decide to adopt this piece or some other piece. Okay. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilwoman Samples.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few comments and maybe something Mr. Kilby can pass along and have someone work on, or maybe somewhere down the line work with the law department. For me, I worked on my first campaign when I was 17 years old. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. And I've seen when their judges had a D and an R next to their name, and some had an asterisk when they were the incumbent. That's how long I've been doing work for the Democratic Party. But to get rid of and to think that getting rid of a primary election is going to solve the problem is not. We need primary elections, and because of that, that is probably the biggest reason that I cannot support your legislation. It's fact that we need primaries because that's how you groom new people. When you have a nonpartisan general election where everybody goes straight to the general, you can stack an election with so many people that you'll make sure the incumbent gets back in. When you have new young people who want an opportunity, they would never have an opportunity because you just stack the deck against them is what would happen. So, and then we have to think about, again, our independent voters. The independent voter in the state of Ohio and across this country, they are the majority registered voter, not the Democrats, not the Republicans, and we continue to forget about them in this process. And I think this is how we bring them to the table, is giving them an opportunity to vote whether for a Democrat or Republican without them feeling the pressures of a party and just voting for the person they feel better represents them. But I do not think that happens if you get rid of a primary election at all. So I think that we as a legislative body have to get better about working with each other even when we have differences, and working with our law department even if we have issues. I've known Judge Belfans for a very long time, and she is the consummate professional, so I wanted to make sure I said that on the record. And there's been times on the weekend when Brian has called me and we've worked through things for me, and I sent a lot of stuff over. Some of it, you know, maybe a little aggressive, and we work through that, and they tell me when they feel like this is not going to fly. And I listen to that, I go back and I do my research, and I come back. So I think that that's what we have to think about doing here down the line. But to get rid of a primary to do it, I can't support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Neal?
Madam Chair, I just want to reiterate this body needs to do what's best for the city. We keep rotating back to the party politics. Again, the last election is a perfect example of how using the D, a majority of the community was manipulated. Just because some people had a D by their name, didn't even come into the community to talk to certain segments of the community. Folks didn't even come into the community to hear their issues or address their issues. But because they had that D, they were able to manipulate a population. The Democrat and Republican on literature and whatnot will still be able to take place. To your point about not discriminating against independent voters, when you eliminate the primary, everybody can come in and they take a ballot and they can vote on the person. More so, they vote on the character and the record of that individual, and the person can't just hide behind a party and just skate in. Unfortunately, many of our citizens vote straight ticket, unfortunately. The advantage of, if we look at our school board where they have, and at our judges, where they get all the information beforehand, but when they go on the ballot, they have to have some information about that individual. It's a dangerous thing when someone just goes in and votes because somebody is a Democrat or Republican. I'd rather they not vote at all. If they don't understand the character and what that person stands for. But this body right here, right now, leave our party aside. What is best for the city of Akron? Eliminate the cost totally. Do away with the primary. We talk about equity and inclusion. Eliminate the primary. Every citizen has a chance to vote. And we don't discriminate. The primary supports 2 special interest groups. Eliminate it. And you automatically take care of the voters. We often look at, and this is something that the law department can consider, we often say, well, what are other cities doing? Look to Cleveland, look to Columbus, look to Cincinnati, look to Dayton, look outside the state. Look at 77% of the other cities that have eliminated their primary. But for this body, what's best for the city? Eliminate the cost totally. Do not discriminate against any of our citizens. Let all of them have the opportunity to vote, and we automatically solve the question about the military.
Is there anyone else in the chambers on council that would like to make a comment? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'd like to make a comment. I recall you bringing this forward, Councilman Kilby, last year. And having seen it again this year, I had a couple concerns. One was, my concern was, it seemed to me that this one piece of legislation was covering 2 separate things. One is to do nonpartisan, and one is to do away with primaries. And I just had a feeling, I haven't gotten it answered yet, but I'm sure I will, that we weren't, according to 6.6 of our charter, that we weren't allowed to bring two different pieces in at one time, on one piece of legislation. I had a concern about the 50 signatures, if those would come, like if I were running for Ward 8, if they had to be 50 signatures for Ward 8, still as as we abide by now, because it said from electors. So I had some reserves. I believe that our choices are to act or not to act, not to react, okay? I find it interesting. As I researched, I did find that a lot of local cities have nonpartisan races. Over 75% of our cities do have nonpartisan races. However, some of them still do have primaries, because there's 4 different types of primaries that I found out about that I have to tell you, unless I had researched, I wouldn't have known about it. And there was a blanket primary, which voters choose one candidate per office. And so they still have a primary and still move it on. I've been able to represent Ward 8 for a little over 7 years now, and I just always want to be worthy of that position, which means I do believe it should go to the voters, but I believe it should be a worthy piece. And I believe if there's something that needs to be changed to make it better, then that's our responsibility, is to make it better. But having said that, as I look at right now at the memorandum, I believe this needs to be made better. And I don't feel confident or feel that it would be my purpose here representing the people in my ward, that this is a piece yet that has met the criteria to come before the voters. Okay. Yes, Councilman Kilby.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Let me address some of the concerns from my colleagues. First off, my legislation does not, it's one issue. It doesn't violate the single issue rule. It's one issue. Should we put this on the ballot or not? The charter change has 2 different things, but the ordinance addresses one issue, and that's whether or not we should put this on the ballot for the voters to decide. So as far as people not being comfortable with not having a primary, because I've heard this expressed a number of times, like, all you need is 50 signatures to get it on the ballot. You could have oodles and oodles of people running for office. Well, and someone even mentioned or implied that someone could game the system to help the incumbent. Well, we elect our school board with no primary, nonpartisan. We elect our judges, no primary, nonpartisan, and I don't see where that has been a problem in this city. So I think that's an unfounded fear. It's not going to happen. So I just think this body should put this on the ballot, let the voters decide. And as far as these objections from the law department, I don't know, but I have the feeling that the other places in the charter where it mentions primary would be nullified. If there's no primary, it means nothing. So, and it can be cleaned up later at the Charter Review Commission if it is a problem. So with that, I would ask this body to vote on this and bring it to a vote here
Thank you, Councilman Kim.
tonight
I will ask
at
our
the
committee
entire
right now.
council.
Okay, I will ask our committee right now. Is there a motion?
I think the motion was previously
Okay,
made, and I'm seconding the motion.
Okay. We had a motion by Councilman Fusco
Turn your
for an
microphones on,
for an
please.
adverse report, and then we have a second by Councilman Freeman. Okay. All in favor of the adverse report, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Would you please do a roll call?
Keith.
Aye.
Amobian. Freeman.
Aye.
Excuse me. Fusco. Hope.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, we also have more before us on this committee. So 3 and 4, we will place on time. Or 4 and 5, I apologize. And then we will go to our new piece that has come before us on rules. Number 1 is a resolution congratulating Diane Miller-Dawson on the occasion of her retirement and her many career achievements, thanking her for her dedicated service to the city of Akron, wishing her well in all of her future endeavors, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Hardy.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Ms. Miller-Dawson will be here tonight, and I know we'll have more words to say, but just for my own purposes, when Mayor Horgan asked me to serve at City Hall, there was someone who will remain nameless who said that would not do very well, that civil servants, and this was the direct quote, would run me off a cliff. And that made me pretty concerned to come in my first day, I'll be honest with you. And the first person to come to my office was Diane. And she sat down with me, and from that moment on, she has been a mentor and a friend. And I couldn't be more happy for her and more sad for myself that she won't be down the hall. But I appreciate you letting me just share that story, and I know the mayor and others will want to talk about Diane later tonight, but she's one of a kind, and she will be missed.
And before you leave the podium, do you have a preference on this piece?
Would love it if we could ask for suspend the rules for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There may be other comments that people here would like to make, or you may want to save them for this evening. So the committee, are there any comments from the committee? Seeing none, are there any comments from Councilwoman Amobian?
You know, I couldn't second Mr. Hardy's comments enough in terms of Diane being an outstanding person who has been available to answer questions and to discuss issues with. And she happens to be a Delta as well. So I certainly wish her well in her new endeavors, and I'm sure she'll do fine for the county. Thank you very much.
Anyone else from the committee? Anyone from council that's in the chambers? Seeing none? Okay, I have had a motion for suspension of the rules. I've had a request. Do I have a motion? Okay,
Second.
and I've got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, we'll go on to number 2. Resolution denouncing President Donald Trump's inflammatory remarks aimed at Congresswoman Cortez, Omar Presley, and, please help me, Labe, directing the director to forward a copy of this resolution declaring an emergency. And I have 2 people that have sponsored this piece of legislation. Councilman Swirsky, would you like to?
Okay.
Or Council?
I made a copy of the quote. So that if there's been a little bit of time has passed, but I pass it.
Okay, well, let's wait to your microphone so we get that on record.
I never keep it on.
I know, but I'm just look, and I'm gently reminding you that we'll wait until you get to your microphone.
Okay, so the words here are important, but the context and the choices that the president made in terms of who he was criticizing, I think, are also very important.
Rich, can you turn your mic on, please? Pull it forward. Thank you.
So the word, didn't work. So the words are important, but when I teach, the context for how the words were used and who they were aimed at is also very, very important. And in this case, when I first heard it, I remember thinking, well, they basically take the same positions. These 4 women, who are all women of color, they take the same positions as Elizabeth Warren and other progressive women in the Democratic Party. And it's just, why did he choose these 4? I asked myself, and like a lot of you, I probably threw up my hands a little bit and Trump says a lot of things that I don't like, probably same with a lot of us. I've never sponsored a resolution about something he said. And even on this one, what motivated me was when I saw a rally that he was speaking at where the crowd started chanting, "Send her back." And that to me was a danger point for our country. And it's a difference if one leader is saying something that we don't like or disapprove of or find morally incorrect. But it's another thing if that leader is using their office to set up chants like that one. And whether he said that at the rally or not to get them to chant, we don't know for sure, but overall, his office, the original comments helped set that up. And then for him to question the right of elected congresswomen to voice their opinions on how the government is run, I find that hard to believe. But he then recommends that they should go back to their countries. Now, it's true, if you look just at the words, he says, well, go back to your countries and see how bad they are. Only one of them is from another country, factually. The other ones, we all have other countries in our origins, in our history, in our ancestors, but only one of them actually moved from another country here. But the key words there are go back. And you could say something in a certain way to elicit a certain kind of response. And what and I think later he didn't separate himself from, is encouraging the idea of America, love it or leave it. Elected officials shouldn't have opinions. They should just go back to another country and see how bad it is there. So I'm asking you today to help send a message. We need people of all national origins to be able to disagree, especially elected officials. We in Akron have benefited from immigrants culturally and economically, if we believe the reports that have come out, that have even brought the attention of the Washington Post nationally, that Akron immigrants are helping a city bounce back from industrial exodus. So we've all benefited from the immigrants here in Akron, and nationally, we've all benefited from dissenters in our country. The original rubber worker union leaders, union organizers were told the same thing. Go back to the country that you're from. Anti-war protesters were told, America, love it or leave it, while they're protesting the Vietnam War. Environmental activists have heard the same thing, love it or leave it. But protests in our country have always, or not always, but often end up to be the policies of a modern American society that we all enjoy. So please help separate us from quiet, silenced government officials who don't protest Trump's acrimony in this case, and please support this resolution.
Apologize. President Somerville, would you like to add your...
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Councilman Swirsky said everything that I would like to say, so I just wanted to stand in support of this resolution as a African-American elected official, and hope that my colleagues around the horseshoe will do the exact same thing. Again, President Trump's comments continue to promote and legitimize fear and hatred of people of color. So thank you, Councilman Swirsky, for your comments and for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Read this over the weekend and had a lot of things kind of go through my mind as I thought about it and tried to, digest. Brings up subjects that that I thought about: attacks, accusations, insinuations, disrespect. But it just doesn't come from one side or one person. What we're talking about here is something that's going back and forth. That we are in a growing war inside of our own country, and pitting U.S. citizens against each other, and we just continue with it, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. If you want a stop, then have all involved stopped. Because it's not just one side. It's not just the President of the United States. It's not the four names that you have in the resolution. And we need to stop going back and forth and quit the finger pointing and quit the attacking and the accusations and the insinuations and the disrespect. I was brought up that you respect people in position. You may not like them. You may not like what they do. But they are in that position, and they do, and the office does command respect from the citizens of the United States. I was in the military, and I was under a lot of different officers over me that I really didn't care for, and I really didn't like what they did or what they said. But in the military, you respect. And I think that's what we're losing here. We're losing respect for our President, office of the United States. We keep attacking, we keep insinuating, we keep going after. And you know what? We're in Akron, Ohio. We're in council chambers. And I think a resolution coming in and for us to send something to the President of the United States to tell him to stop, I think we're out of line. And I'm not going to vote for this. I'm not going to support it. I think it's very disrespectful. And if I don't know, I would ask for it to be pulled. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else on the committee who'd like to make a comment? Okay. Any other people in chambers would like to comment? Councilwoman Samples.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank President Somerville and Councilman Swirsky for bringing this resolution in and respectfully ask for my name to be added. I'm very troubled that the leader of the free world is very disrespectful, especially to women. You know, you can Google how many times has Trump disrespected women, and the number comes up, they actually have a website that's tracking how he disrespects women, and that's troubling. You are the President of the United States. And to tweet out, go back where you came from, calling it roach-infested, disgusting, filthy places, you are the leader of the free world. And if, you know, we may want to say you got to give respect to get respect, but you are the leader of the free world, so your respect level should be on a whole different level than anyone else's. And to accuse them of being incapable of loving our country, to me, it's just, it's very egregious. You know, Omar may be a refugee, but if you take a visit to North Hill, we have a community of refugees who are doing fine things in this community and energizing our economy. So not only should they be offended, we all should be offended. No one around this horseshoe is 100% Native American. We are all a product of immigration, even Donald Trump. His grandparents didn't even speak English. But yet you sit and talk about these women as if they don't have rights and forget where you came from. You sit and talk about countries that you preside over, I mean, states, Puerto Rico. Look how he's talked about the individuals who live in Puerto Rico. You're still the president. This is still a part of the United States. I mean, just a couple days ago, I mean, look how he talks about Baltimore, Maryland, but you're the president of the United States. So if you see a problem there, fix it. You know, he's not an average citizen, he's the president. And, you know, the one thing I like in this resolution is when you talk about the inscription on the bottom of the Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. He is the leader of the free world. And I'm sorry, we deserve better. Thank you.
Any other council members? Councilwoman Simpson.
First of all, I just want to say thank you to Councilman Swirsky. When he first kind of talked to me about the resolution, I kind of wanted to kind of sit back to see, was this for show or was this really something that you really meant? I really appreciate that you would take the leadership to do it, and I too would add that ask that my name be added to the resolution. And to my colleague's point, there's a point in Scripture that talks about to whom much is given, much is required. There's some things that I can't do as a council person that probably a lay person can probably come in and do, because to whom much is given, much is required. As the president of these United States, respect gets respect, but you have to give it. Even when it's not given, you're still a leader of the free world. And so I think that's the bigger piece that we have to look at. But even greater than that, so much of his talk is perpetuating such a division in our country. I mean, the whole idea of go back is so reminiscent of, as an African American, being told that you need to go back to Africa whenever we dissent or when we don't agree with the way we do business in America. I think change comes when we have voices that are willing to lift their voices and add it to a discussion, even though we don't agree. And I think that's what these women are doing. He probably is, among all the presidents that we've been privileged to have in our country, probably the most disrespectful to women. And I'm so grateful to our fellows in the chamber who would see fit to bring forth this resolution. And again, I ask that my name be added. Thank you.
Councilman Fusco.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to add my name as well, Mr. Clerk. And I applaud the efforts as well. It's unprecedented, and it's very unsettling in terms of what we've seen since 2016 with regards to the the statements that have been made, the actions that have been made, and I don't think it's the disrespect for the office. I think it's disrespect for the person, and that's kind of like I think where it falls on for a lot of folks out there. And it's very unfortunate we've reached this level in terms of treating women, women of color. It's appalling to see, and I just hope and pray that someday we won't have to see this, or our grandchildren won't. Thank you. I'd like to request suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any other comments from the committee or members of council? Seeing none, pardon, did you have a comment? Yeah. No, I didn't have it. I was going to make comments on it for a second. I will agree with absolutely with this resolution, as long as we here within the chambers remember respect. I will tell you, I believe what Eve Belfonte just now with what she went through, and she even stated as our law director that she was offended, and I think that there were other people in this room that were offended by comments. I think it's great to do a resolution, but I believe it starts right here in this chamber around this horseshoe as to how we respect one another and each other. And we have had a motion for suspension of rules. Is there a second?
I'd like to second it.
Okay, I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I want to abstain.
Abstain, okay. Mr. Clerk, would you please do a roll call on the suspension of the rules?
Keith.
Aye.
Mobian.
Aye.
Freeman.
Abstain.
Fusco.
Aye.
Hope. 3 to 1 with 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you so much. On this particular piece that we just had here? Okay. Okay. Councilman Neal?
Councilman Sworsky said something that was important when he said how our acting president speaks out against those who have difference of opinion. Comments were made in this chamber about us respecting folks. Let us not forget that 2 of our sitting members who served this community well were selected out not to be represented anymore by our own mayor. I mean, we cannot pick and choose when we want to have respect shown. 2 outstanding citizens who have served this community well in many different ways, on the school board and on council. Outstanding legislators. And our mayor singled them out to remove them from council. Now, I wasn't going to say anything, but we tiptoe around these things. We tiptoe around these things. 2 African-American women, outstanding legislators, were selected, named by our mayor to have removed from this council. And for what reason? Just like those women in Congress who are fighting for their constituents, fighting for what they believe in. That's all they've done here. So, I wasn't going to say anything, but we can't tiptoe around and choose when we want to be civil, when we want to show respect. That was the ultimate sign of disrespect, not just to those women, but to the people who put them in office here.
Is there anything else to come before the committee? Hearing and seeing none, we are dismissed. We are adjourned.
Budget and Finance will meet in 1 minute. Thank you.
appreciate what you said, Veronica.
Oh, yeah, you're my favorite legislator.
Today.
Oh, yeah.
A few weeks ago, I like
I'm a bit, I know, I understand. Yeah, because you're worried about what you're going to say. If you jump in and I'm going to put a notice, I'm going to put a little notice on everybody's mic. Please turn on before speaking. Well, that's good for everybody. And just for the people that come in and speak like, I know.
And I said, no, I still didn't do it. That's all right. I'd like to call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order.
Let's see.
For the record, we have all members present. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting? Motion. Second. A motion to second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. We have two items on our old agenda, and
that's it.
I'd first ask Mr. Fricker, much question or response from council this week in regards to?
Yes, I have not received any additional questions, about the material that we presented last week regarding the wage ordinance and the medical benefit ordinance.
Okay, very good. So on item number 1 on the old agenda, any questions or comments? Mr. Mobian.
Have we finalized with the third or fourth union or whatever it is? Is it the third or fourth?
Excuse me, I couldn't hear you, Linda.
Have we finalized the negotiations?
No, we're still in negotiation with the IAAF, Local 330.
Other questions or comments? Am I safe to assume that we'd like to get this passed this evening?
Yes, we are seeking suspension of the rules on both items.
Very good. Would anyone care to entertain a motion? Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Okay, let's do a roll call.
Roll call. Freeman.
Aye.
Keith. Milkovich.
No.
Hoke. Abstain. Amobian. Okay, measure passes, 3 yeses, 1 no, and 1 abstention.
All right, we'll move on to our second item here. Again, any questions or comments from council members or any other or committee members, anybody else might be on council in the chambers? Ms. Amobian?
I know you indicated last week that, is it Paladina? Is a game changer. Do you need to have so many employees to sign up for them to be utilized and become this game changer?
No.
So if you only had 10 people sign up, it's...
I would suspect that that would be pretty improbable, but if that happened, we would still be able to pay the fee, and they would probably go somewhere else and instead of establishing an independent facility just for the City of Akron employees. But they, as you heard last week, they have facilities all over, so.
So those individuals would just go to the existing facilities? And primarily, there's no exchange of money, no copay and all that kind of stuff? This is primarily a healthcare provider?
It's a healthcare provider. We, as a city, will pay a subscription price per employee. The employee pays nothing additional out of pocket. In fact, it saves money out of pocket because instead of going to their own doctor where they'd have to pay their copay, they would have no copay. In fact, what wasn't said last week also, it covers a lot of basic tests, laboratory tests, because Paladina has their own laboratories, x-rays, some things that are normally done during a physical or things like that with lab work. Again, the employee would have no copay and wouldn't have to go to a laboratory to pay that. So that's why I say when it's a game changer, I think that's a big game changer for our employees.
And they're a primary health care provider, not, they don't do the specialized?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Looking for a motion for suspension of the rules? Motion. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. And opposed? Okay, we'll have a roll call, please.
Freeman.
Aye.
Keith. Aye. Milkovich. No. Hoke. Amobian. Again, passes 3 yeses, 1 no, and 1 abstention. The measure passes.
Very good, and we'll see that that's passed out this evening. Thanks for all your work. I know hundreds and hundreds of hours of work. You know, and I say thank you, but appreciate it.
Thank you, but that's what I get paid for.
All right, thank you so much. And we are adjourned at 4:20. Thank you.
That's a wrap.